Good evening, everyone. I'm also going to talk about failure because I also, alongside Greg, I believe that we can learn a lot more from failure than from successes, or that successes are, it's really hard to learn from successes. I think maybe that's a better way to put it. I spent a decade with Mozilla. I started the Tokyo office, Beijing office, launched Firefox 1.5 and stayed with Mozilla until 2005, and led the evangelism group and built a number of, basically all of the Mozilla communities across Asia, many of them over 10,000 volunteers in India, in Indonesia, and other Asian communities. So I want to talk about Firefox OS. How many people remember or have heard of Firefox OS? Okay, just a handful of you. So Firefox OS was a project that was started in 2011. Oh, yeah. So it was there were three goals for Firefox OS. It was a web-based mobile operating system to broaden the access to the web via an ultra-low-cost smartphone, to break the duopoly of iOS and Android, and to lower the barrier to app development, basically enable any web developer to become a mobile app developer. Starting in 2011 until the project ended in 2015, we worked really, really hard and built up a number of really incredible partners, both on the hardware side, ZTE and Alcatel, and a lot of other great Chinese manufacturers. And most of the carriers in the world were really interested in having a non-Android, non-iOS competitor in the market. Basically, so most of the carriers in the world were really interested in partnering with Mozilla and building this new platform. So we had, great telecom partners, starting with Deutsche Telekom and Telenor in Norway, but all through India and Indonesia and Philippines. And why did Firefox OS fail? I think the project tried to do too many things at once. So there was this really powerful duopoly of the Android and iOS ecosystems. It's not just the hardware and the gigantic companies behind it, but it's also the developer ecosystems and the app store owners. Also, it was really difficult to build and standardize open web APIs for phone functionality. What I mean by that is that the operating system was a web page, and so we had to build all these different mobile phone functionalities to make it work on a web page. So you could send an SMS over the web, or using HTML basically, or building a ringer or a vibrator, or all these different functionalities. We had to standardize those into HTML, put them through the standardization process, and then put them onto the platform. HTML lacked some functionality versus native app functionality on mobile. One of the key things that I think really we struggled with in India was that WhatsApp was not available in a web format. You could log into WhatsApp over the web, but you had to have the native app. And then the $25 smartphone was too weak to be compelling in 2004. We really thought that having the lowest possible cost phone was really important to get it to the broadest number of people, but perhaps the specification was either too weak or the feature set was not compelling enough. And all the carriers that we were partnering with still had to promote their Android and iOS offerings as well. So yes, they were partnering with us, but they were also competing with us at the same time. So 5 lessons for you. Pick a smaller problem to fix as a startup. we spent 4 or 5 years and hundreds of millions of dollars and failed. So it was a very expensive failure, but it was also a big goal. It was a really challenging goal. Don't try to fight too many battles at the same time. We were trying to fight these gigantic companies. We were trying to build this global network. We were trying to standardize all this new functionality into HTML. We were trying to do so many things at the same time, which made the challenges even harder. De facto monopolies are very hard to fight as an insurgent. It's sort of an obvious statement, but probably the two most challenging de facto monopolies we have, in the tech world today are iOS and Android. And they're probably, when you look at these large tech trends, iOS and Android are probably at their peak, or they're in their prime years. Whereas if we look at like a previous technology like Windows, Windows is still relevant, but it's not nearly as influential as it used to be. And these tech trends usually take a decade or sometimes 2 decades. And we try to attack iOS and Android in the prime of their strength. Timing is key. So as I said before, tech monopolies never last forever, but we try to compete against those when they are very strong as they are today. And then finally, in the West, we talk about FANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google. In China, we talk about BAT-TMD. As a startup, you have to either partner with or navigate through the giants, and that's figuring out what your strategy is going to be and how to navigate. If you are planning to navigate through the giants, figuring out how to do that. That's probably one of the big challenges, and Greg talked about longer term strategies. That's one of the things that we failed. So thank you very much. Happy to talk about that in more detail if you're interested.